Okay, we'll call the meeting in order, regular meeting of the Newman City Council and Redevelopment Agency of February 10th, 2004. Please stand for the pledge and the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow your heads and join me in prayer. We're thankful for this evening. We're thankful for us being able to gather here for yet another council meeting. And we pray that we're able to make the correct decisions on behalf of our town. Amen.
Amen. A roll call, please.
Present.
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 Present. Present. Declaration of conflicts of interest. Does anybody have a conflict this evening? See none. Ceremonial matters. Seeing as February is Black History Month, Tim will join me in reading a proclamation. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's become an annual tradition and part of our strategic plans and goals for the city of Newman to recognize cultural diversity in our town. And as such, for the last 3 years or so, I've penned a proclamation for various cultural diversity weeks, months, or days. And this year I'm very much happy to say that I've written another proclamation recognizing Black History Month. So without much further ado, whereas the city of Newman is a cordial community of diverse cultures with shared democratic ideas, and whereas the city of Newman recognizes the celebrated history of paying tribute to its citizens that have rendered their time and talent for the betterment of our community through its growth and development, and whereas an observance of African American history brings forth a continued effort to overcome prejudices and teach tolerance, ensuring a basis for better understanding and cooperation amongst our citizens, and whereas the month of February has been established nationally as Black History Month, and the city of Newman wishes to join its African American residents in commemoration of this month.
Thank you, Councilmember Park. And now, therefore, I, John Fantasia, Mayor of the City of Newman, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2004 as Black History Month in the City of Newman. Tim, thank you for your assistance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item 7, communication from staff. None this evening. Item 8, items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything that is not on the posted agenda, now's the time to come to the podium. Seeing none. Items from the public, agenda items. When the item comes before us, please, if you'd like to say anything, please come to the podium. Try to keep your comments to under 5 minutes, and please give us your name and address for the record. Item 9, public hearings. We have none. Item 10, consent calendar, approval of warrants, approval of minutes of the January 27, 2004 regular meeting, second reading and adoption of ordinance number 2004-1, an ordinance amending sections of the Title I, Chapter 6 of the Newman Municipal Code. City Manager.
Yeah, put waive second reading on there, ahead of that second.
We have to add that to the...
Yeah, just see you're going to add a waive. Usually we've added that section.
Okay. If somebody would like to make a motion and amend Section 3 for the waiving of the actual reading of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, so moved, and I move that we approve the consent calendar with the amendment.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11, regular business. Item 11.1, water resources issues and planning background and setting. A will be source water alternatives. B, water softener ordinance for new users. Item C, analysis and rate study of water and wastewater systems. Infrastructure master plan and updates. Urban water management plan. Water systems master plan. Sewer system master plan. Storm drainage master plan, and summary perspective. David?
Up already. I introduced this,
sure.
Mayor, if you don't mind. A little background here. Water resources planning is what we are thrust into, whether we like it or not. And it's not as though we haven't been doing this in the past, but we're facing increasing performance standards, increasing discharge requirements. And as reported to the council at the January 27th meeting, sewer, water, and stormwater issues are becoming very much more pressing, and the city really has got to try to develop a clear perspective on those issues and what we must accomplish in advance and be able to deal with it. We really got to know what has to be done, how to go about them in the most efficient and cost-effective manner that we can. Carollo Engineers, the city's wastewater consultant, has a really good grasp of the city and its situation in regards to water resource issues. And I'd asked them to prepare and describe the array of tasks that the city is going to be facing, what we're going to have to deal with. A part of which requires preparation of the scope of work, obviously, and costs in order to know what we're dealing with, so we can do some financial planning also. So this is maybe the first of several, but at least a broad brush perspective building workshop to where Carollo and their subconsultants will present the things that we need to be coming to grips with and try to do this in a manner that builds your perspective. Feel free to ask questions. We're all here to learn tonight, so let's take advantage of David and his crew.
David, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you. That's a lot of stuff on there, isn't
Oh
there?
man, I almost got lost.
Yeah. Well, if you would follow the agenda, let me know when I get lost and get me back on the agenda. I'd appreciate that too. So
We'll have no trouble doing that.
good. There it is. Thank you. I'll go over the list, I think, in the order that it's on your agenda. And did we pass out the color schedule? Thank you. This slide is the just about the last slide in my presentation, but I thought it would be good for you to see it because it kind of lists the subjects and has a very preliminary schedule that that might or might not work. That's something. Schedule something that has to be discussed, but it also just kind of help you walk through my presentation a little bit. Tonight, I'll do some introduction on some of the projects that we're doing, and then I have with me Tom Gaffney of Bartle Wells, who's financial planner that we use work with at a lot of cities. And I have Tony Akell, who's our modeler, who models cities and does. And tonight he'll be also talking about the urban water management plan. But they'll come up, and during the presentation, if you want to, when Tom talks about financial plans, we can talk as much about that as we want, and then I can come back and finish the rest of the subjects that are on the thing. First slide is current projects. If my eyesight was better, I could probably read that up there, couldn't I, Judy? But anyway, current projects, these are projects that, 3 projects that we have under contract with you right now. Just a brief update. BOD EC tracking contract where we're going to work with Ernie and Lance and go out and try to track down where some unknown BOD organic load is coming into the treatment plant. We just can't balance it in the sewers. Ernie and Lance are going to do almost all the work, but we're going to try to track down and figure out exactly where all the organic load is coming to the plant. Lance has said he'd probably do that first, maybe sometime the first week in March, and it'll take 3 or 4, 5 days of your city's time to do that. And we'll continue, and then when we get the data, we'll provide a letter telling you where it appears that to focus on the organic load. And that's important because somebody's got to pay for that organic load, and we want to we're going to do a rate study. We want to charge the right people for the organic load coming in the treatment plant. The second is the completion of the facilities plan. We'll have it complete in mid-April. It will further define what we see in the future for you on your wastewater treatment. That is really based on the meeting that the mayor and several others and I had with the regional board on where they given some pretty clear direction. That should be done in April. Formal response to the NOV, that's a notice of violation, the letter we got from the regional board. I'm sorry for the acronym there. And the TMRP, that's the tentative monitoring and reporting program. Those are your permits. But we'll have those complete in mid-April too also. That's ongoing work we've discussed in the past. The future projects, there are 4 of them that we'll talk about. I have a slide for each of these: source water alternatives, water softener ordinance, financial plan that I'll ask Tom to come up and talk about, and then the infrastructure master planning updates, urban water management plan, and the sewer master plans. So the first one is the source water alternatives. The source water meaning your drinking water. Just be clear on that. That's your drinking water, your well water. If we were able to get a low salt domestic water supply, it would solve the major issue we have at the wastewater treatment plant on having too much salt going into the groundwater out there. So that's what brings up the subject of source water alternative. Your source water is high. Your current groundwater, we checked with Ernie, and it's still around 1,200 to 1,700 micromoles per centimeter. That's how much salt is in it. A typical city in the valley might have 500. The Department of Health Service recommends 900. It's not a health problem. It's a public appearance issue when it gets above 900, leaving deposits on faucets and things, and things like that. There are a limited number of source water alternatives. Some of the cities have banded together to go get water, for multiple cities, taking one shot at a source, usually off the aqueduct or something like that. And to proceed, you've got to hire a water right attorney. There, I don't know if you read the Bee, but there was a very good editorial on if you were going to tell your child to do something right now, you ought to tell him to go get a law degree in water rights, and he'd be set up, because that is the hot thing right now. Yeah, and that where we are on that is Crollo has identified an attorney in Fresno who specializes in this, and we'll bring him over and let him talk to Jim, and then sometime in the future we have to decide do we want to look at that both to improve your water, the supply, your well water quality, your water quality for your residents for drinking, as well as partially solve or solve one of the issues at the treatment plant. It's not the only way to solve the problem at the treatment plant. The next slide is on water softener ordinance for new users. The notice of violation requires Newman to adopt an ordinance that restricts new residential water softeners. Doesn't prohibit them at all. It just makes them meet a certain standard so that they put as little salt as possible into the sewer system. Part of our work is we had our attorneys that we use on these issues look at it, and they've determined that that you can do this. There was some question whether you could do it, but with the new legislation, you can do that now under that code. And we do, even when you do install this ordinance, it will have limited short-term impact because it only deals with the, initially the new ones. So, but it's something that state wants all cities to move toward, and the regional board is going to expect to see you implement something sometime in the near future. So it's on your plate to look at. The next subject is the financial plan rate study that Tom will talk about, and when he thinks we beat it up, he'll have Tony come up and talk about the urban water management plan. Tom McGaffney with Bartle Wells and Associates out of Oakland, Berkeley area, and Berkeley. Okay, Tom.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members and members of the public. Once again, my name is Tom Gaffney, and I'm a sub-consultant to Corolla on many projects of this nature. And we do water and wastewater financing plans and rate studies. And I suppose we've done over 1,000 of them in California. And your engineers tell you what needs to be built, and your discharge permits give you a lot of rules and regulations, but the real tough decision is how to pay for all this, and that's where we come in. And so a financing plan is needed to determine where to raise the capital to pay the initial cost of the facilities. And then rate studies are required to, one, pay off debt if, we're looking to see if we can get some grants here. You don't have to pay those off. And some low-interest loans, but there's the ongoing operating costs and then whatever loans you do have to pay off. So that's the need for rate studies. And we have proposed, and, depends on what the council decides, but for both water and sewer. And it's generally good to do them together, although they might be on a different schedule. I think water's ahead of wastewater, right? I mean, opposite. Sewer's ahead of water. But it's pretty good to know what's happening in water and what's happening in sewer when you do a rate study, because they're so closely intertwined. And I know that you've raised your sewer rate recently, and the slide says here it may not be adequate. I don't know that yet, but I think it was there was a major rate increase here, and we'll definitely examine that. And then you haven't touched your water rates for probably over 10 years, and that's what we see in a lot of cities and special districts. Water and sewer agencies, they set the rates and then they kind of don't want to get into it again. So some of the steps in our study are to determine the annual revenue requirements, and that's how much money do you need, and that includes paying off any loans, just like I said. And then a key part of this is to split the cost between current users and future users. And future users, we collect their share of the cost, for costs of expanding the facilities in the form of a connection charge, an initial connection charge, and that gets them even with the people that are here that have spent a lot of money on water and sewer systems that they get to use. And then, so we put all the expansion costs off on new development. It's only fair. And then the current users have to pay to upgrade existing facilities. If they have to meet higher standards, they got to pay their share of that, and then pay the operating costs. So we take a look at, the result of our study would actually be to develop actual charges, connection fees and rates and charges. And I've mentioned here that we're going to look for grants and loans as much as possible. I think the city should qualify for some grants. They're tough to get, but I think you might qualify, especially in wastewater. And there are some low-interest loans. They're going for 2.5% now, so those are a pretty good deal. Our work would be very easy to understand. It's deadly serious because it involves raising rates for your ratepayers, but we try to make it very easy to understand, and the reasons for it easy to understand. And I expect there would be either workshops or council meetings or council committees, and we'd work through staff and with the engineers and come back maybe once or twice when we have preliminary results, so everybody would understand exactly what's going on. And there would be recommendations, actual recommendations of what the rates should be. And then we really would encourage you, what we've been doing with so many of our agencies now, is to set the charge initially at what we think it should be, a fair amount, and then index it. And we index it generally to an engineering news record index, it's called, and that might increase it just a tiny bit each year, but it generally is enough. We've had agencies where you know, it's been enough that they always have enough money for, say, like 12 to 15 years. If you have to build a lot more projects, then it has to be ratcheted. But generally, if you index it, you avoid that problem of not touching your rates for 10 years, and you also avoid the problem of having giant rate increases, which I think are disruptive in most communities. It's better to have tiny, tiny 1 or 2% on a regular basis to keep up with the actual costs. So if you have any questions, that'd be fine. Or I think it's Tony's turn now.
Well, before you leave the podium,
Yes.
Mr. Gaffney, I do have one question. Something that caught my eye in the staff report was at the back when it talked about infrastructure rehabilitation programs. And you've been talking about grants and how could we possibly finance this in your opening comments, which I do appreciate. It says back here in the back, public agencies or incorporated mutual water companies that own and operate water systems serving 200 to 16,000 connections, which would fit our town in there with less than, of course, 60,000. The median household income less than 40,000 and unemployment greater than 9%. Would your study give us those factors as well so that we would know whether or not we actually would be a qualified applicant?
Well, that's a really good question. Generally, you have to meet median income standards, and sometimes unemployment, depending on which grant program you're looking at, sometimes not. Sometimes it's just a median income. And I think we'd be able to use existing information like in the census data to get that. And yeah, we want to qualify you for grants, and so we'd look at that information that's available and be able to make a finding on that for you. Sometimes in some small communities we've actually taken straw polls, where we've had citizens go about and poll the folks, or have a mailer that goes out and people fill it in. But I think here there probably should be like statistical evidence,
Well, yes, most definitely within our region, countywide, Stanislaus County, I have the wherewithal to know that we fit under those guides countywide, but I wouldn't.
We want to do it for your community,
town.
though.
Exactly.
Yeah, there should be a census tract for this town. I think it'll have
There is, yeah.
one or two.
I think there is it's county report too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any more questions for Tom?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm here to talk about the Urban Water Management Plan. What is the Urban Water Management Plan? It's a report, like a general plan, about an inch thick. That gives you an idea. There's a lot of information here contained about the water system, the water supply. What is its purpose? Why do we need an Urban Water Management Plan? The purpose is to describe and evaluate the water sources for the city. It also will describe the efficient uses of water. Are we using water wisely, efficiently? And to describe future and project future demands. Why do we need it? We need it because it's the law. The state has passed the Urban Water Management Planning Act back in 1983, and many cities have started implementing it back then. Many haven't. But recently they've added in a lot of laws, and they've tied a lot of state grants to having a city complete an urban water management plan. It is very difficult to start it the first time. It is easy to update it. This is a plan that has to end by the year that's ending with a 0 or a 5, so it needs to be updated in 2005, 2015, and 10, etc. Some of the state grants that are tied include Proposition 13, Water Code, Division 26, and some of these are infrastructure rehabilitation projects. We have implemented these in other cities. We were successful in applying for the grants and continuing on to the infrastructure grants. Some of the elements that you will find in a report like this include, next please, defining the service area. What kind of area are we planning to service now and every 5 years through the planning period of 2020. That's the magical number for, it's a 20-year planning horizon. Then you compare demands versus supply, current demands versus current supply. Do we have enough water? Do we have enough water to service the current users and the future users? The state wants to know that. They also want to know if we are implementing any demand management measures. This is another term for saying best management practices. Water shortage contingency plans. During drought, the state wants you to have a plan in place. If there's a drought, that you can implement a plan that will scale back the water use. Stage 1 could be reduce water, discouraging lawn irrigation, and then it goes on and on with additional drought phases. And finally, is there a wastewater recycling program implemented? And that's about the urban water management. The next, I would like to talk about water, sewer, and storm master plans. Why do we have those? Those are tools that Jim and Ernie will be able to use for smart growth. It is very difficult and challenging to manage a water and sewer system and a storm system. I think they do it because they are so well at it and they know the system. But to grow as the system grows, and planning it requires a document that is very similar to this, that addresses what the system is about today. What are the current deficiencies, if there are any deficiencies? Where are they? How are we going to fix them? What do we need to fix them? What does it take to service future growth? New wells? When do we need to build a new well to service those future developers? So it's a tool we can use to estimate and finance future developments. And finally, it will include a capital improvement program that Jim can use for financing purposes and budgetary purposes. And that concludes the infrastructure and urban water management plan. Dave?
Thank you, Tony.
Any questions? I'm sorry.
Questions?
No. As you can see, it's a very broad brush of these subjects to introduce them to you. What we've done is, on this slide, is just kind of prioritize them. You know, I mean, can you do them all at one time? No. Do you know, so our priorities are the financial planning and then the urban water management plan, because you know, they're very much tied to money and grants. So we felt there is an urgency to move forward with those. And then the second priority, the sewer system master plans, water system master plan, and then the source water alternatives. If we want to pursue a source water, you know, a fresh water alternative, that can take a long time. It's not that you need it tomorrow, but just recognizing it takes a long time to get it, and some you know, and some patience to go, you know, to go through that process. And then the third priority, you know, maybe the storm drain and the water softener ordinance. But those priorities we can go through maybe with committee meetings and just decide when and how those can happen. On the next slide, we've put some budget figures, because you know, if we move forward with the evaluating the rates, you know, these studies themselves are going to cost a significant amount of money. And I put a very preliminary schedule. I just kind of stuck it on there so we have something that we can say, okay, now move this to the right, move this to the left, you know, and why does, you know, we can get into why does this cost this much, what are these values, but you know, here's the kind of numbers we're talking about. Now the first two, the BOD sampling and the EC sampling, you know, those are things that are ongoing, and they'll be, as I indicated, they'll be done shortly. The facilities plan, the fourth one, the notice of violation, all those things are, you contracted, obligated the money, and we'll have them completed in April. The next two items are the financial plan and rate study for both the sewer and the water. $68,000, and then the urban water management plan would be the $58,000. I always get those numbers, and so those would be something that we think that should be done as soon as possible. The sewer, water, and sewer and water master plans, those suckers are on the order of $100,000 each to do them right and get it done and turn them into a tool that's very usable by your staff to work with developers and get into the computer program and say, okay, if you want to put your subdivision in over here, here's the direct impact, here's how you have to participate in servicing your area, and in fact, we need another well to go with it. Those kind of answers can come out of that. Now, the sewer and water master plans, they are often done parallel with your general plan, and I think that's just something that you'll have to work out is, chicken and egg. How do you do one before the other? How urgent is it to have a sewer master plan if it's going to take 2 or 3 years to get your general plan done? I think we just have to have a discussion how those get done so that we don't waste a lot of money on a sewer plan and then come up with a completely different general plan. But these are the issues we always face and always have to look at and just work through while the general plan is being completed. And then the source water alternatives, we put it out a while just to have a placekeeper on when we would want to work on that. And I only showed 3 months on there because the attorney, he works on 3-month blocks. He will write a contract with him. He will work for 3 months, and then at the end of the 3 months, everyone decides whether you want him to keep working. He recognizes he needs a deadline, otherwise he could just string out forever and ever and ever. So every 3 months you come back and say, he's had updates, but here's where it's going. It's making progress. It's not making progress. You want him to keep going. Now, he does this on a contingency basis. He doesn't charge a nickel unless you get water. We don't work that way. He works that way, because if he's able to transfer a large amount of water somewhere, then he gets a piece of the action, and that's how he makes his money. So the good news is it doesn't cost you anything for his services until he finds water, and you in fact want the water. What you do have to pay for is Corollo engineers, because we supply him whatever information he needs to pursue it. Or you can work with him directly. I put in there a dollar amount that we would work with him directly to provide the information that he would want. And then I put the stormwater drainage plan. Those are the most expensive because it is so diffuse, literally. I mean, tracking down where this water is running through your city, how it's running from out the city through the city, and you got a lot of issues. They're not in pipes. So that is the most difficult and often the most challenging that you have is to control that. So that one is the most expensive to do. On those 3, there is an absolute significant savings if 2 or 3 of them are done at the same time, especially the water and the wastewater, because much like the rate study, to do the water and the wastewater, you have to make some assumptions about the use in the area, and you make the same assumptions, of course, for both of them. These are prices if they were done individually. If they were done together, the price would be lower, not half, but I mean it would be slightly lower. And these are budget figures. These are numbers I think you ought to put in a rate study as potential costs, and then when it comes time to do them, you can negotiate to get them done. So that I think is a pretty quick synopsis of the things we see that you're facing, that we've been working with other cities throughout the valley working on, and give you some budget figures. And I guess at this time we got the question, do you have any other questions, and do you have any direction on how we should do this? Maybe I'll let you do it.
I've got some questions.
Yeah, okay.
I'm trying to ask, but
All right.
You're listening to all the dollar signs
Yeah.
flying off the walls. A lot of people are saying, Well, the governor's gonna straighten things out and pull the regional board off our backs. What do you think of that?
Well, I would say yes and no. Yes, because he's not funding them, so they're not on your back right now because they don't have time to be on your back, or they'd be down here on top of you because they've written this notice of violation, and so they are right now having to prioritize who they are responding to and following up on. And I would put Newman as a priority to the regional board as far as all their workload, above average, because you are putting salt out there. I've got other clients who aren't damaging my opinion, they're not damaging anything, they just haven't gotten some technical reports done, and so that's a very low priority. So I'd say you're about in the middle as far as anyone ever, coming out here and making you do something. So like I said, because of the financial situation and the lack of staff, they're not going to come down on you. But when they do come down on you, they are going to say, why didn't you do it? I mean, they will do that. They'll say, hey, our lack of responding to you doesn't let you off the hook for not having done it. I mean, we probably all heard that before. But an example today, City of Fresno. I was in a meeting on their water treatment plant. They're putting in they're constructing their new water treatment plant, and they have a holding reservoir that they hold their sludge that comes from a water treatment plant. And this is lime, spent lime that they've softened their water with, and they want to put it into just a compacted earth pond, kind of like your pond. They have changed their mind, and they've told the city just this last week they want that lined with a membrane, and this is like new, So and this is at 90% construction completed. The regional board is coming out and saying, no, we want that thing lined. It's a couple $1 million, and so they're not dead asleep at the regional board, but they are dealing with critical issues, and this is an indication of they still are going to enforce not one more drop to the groundwater. They're not going to take the chance that lime, that water, that is just water treatment plant water, is going to get and change that groundwater out there in North Fresno at all. We were surprised, very surprised. But they're not backing off as far as regulations. They're only backing off because they don't have staff to come push as hard everywhere. Did that answer your question?
Well, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball, and
Right.
we all like to be optimistic and think that we can keep on ignoring the problems. I think that the notice of violation kind of burst our bubble and has brought us to grips with the reality of, I guess it's a matter of how fast and how much, as usual. So
Yeah.
I have not seen any indication that the policies have changed or are going to change.
That's correct. Not at the region, not at the Fresno Regional Water Quality Control Board. I deal with them on a weekly basis, and their intentions have not changed. It's just when they can implement them. They haven't backed off on what they are going to want done. So.
I had not realized before in our brief discussions that I couldn't quite visualize how or where the water source acquisition, improved water source acquisition would really fit. It seems like it's something that ought to be, we ought to get going on as early as we can, but it won't really do us any good if we found something tomorrow, because we don't have the ability to act on it financially. So we really need to get our fiscal planning, for example, our rate studies, our rates and charges in place, or in pretty good shape to where we know when they're going to be in place, so we know what we can do before we can actually move to acquire and implement an alternative source of water. So the timing is going to be very critical here. It would be good to get our water rights person out there looking at just the right time, so that if in 3 months he found something that we really liked and were able to move on it, hey, we'd be off and running. But it would not make sense to get him going 6 months or 12 months before we're ready, because those rights tend to evaporate quickly, and hence his 3-month periods, you know.
Right. No, it's definitely a timing issue, and it's a chicken and the egg. You know, do you implement the rates assuming you're going to get it, or do you just have your discussions and know if we get it, here's how much it's going to cost, and we are or aren't willing to you know, consider it. You know,
Well, that's why I think that's why we need to have people that are really experienced, so they can give us pretty good ballpark estimates as we plug into our rate studies.
Yeah, that's what.
I guess I got a couple of comments there based off our interim city manager's comments to you, David, and directly from your presentation. One of them would be augmenting our water source by outsourcing of sorts of what we've been discussing and talking about water rights. And there was a significant reference being made to an attorney for those nature of going out seeking and finding that. And you have in here a source of amount of money to provide them with information.
Yeah.
And it kind of brings to mind something a gentleman told me years ago when I kind of first began serving this capacity. A gentleman by the name of Augie L. He told me, son, you know what your biggest concern is going to be? And he said, the water. And, you know, it's coming to fruition where we just had the CEO of CCID in our City Hall chambers previous meeting. And that was part of the discussion. In the heart of the matter, it comes down to water itself. And I know the emphasis right now, structurally, through the Water Quality Board has been placed on sewer and our discharge and things of that nature. But I think it really, when you hit the nail on the head, is when you're talking about water specifically. Something that you mentioned that I noted here were the parts per million or micromillions. You gave an amount that is acceptable, that's 900.
Yeah.
And an amount you want to keep down to is roughly about 500 or something to that extent, between 500 and 900. And you said ours was between 1,200 and 1,700.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assessment?
Pretty clear. I would say the average for most communities in the Central Valley is 500. That's what they provide.
Okay.
Not along I-5. Along I-5, it's higher than that.
Yes, and
No
I just
question
put it in a
about
layman term. We have what I've understood.
You got I-5 water.
Called hard water.
I-5 water, yes, all
Well,
along.
I guess my question is, with us having this discussion, which I greatly appreciate, because I try to be as knowledgeable as possible when we're faced with making these fiscal decisions as we are. Water softeners with the salt additive help reduce those deposits in people's homes. In other words, the piping, the sinks, and the corrosion and stuff that you're talking about, it helps reduce that. But yet the discharge is what you're saying somehow resonates, and that's what they want us to get rid of.
Yeah.
How you counterbalance that with an ordinance against water softeners.
Yeah, just a little bit of chemistry there. What deposits in the sewers and on your faucet is the calcium. So a water softener trades a sodium for a calcium. And now instead of the calcium coming out onto your hands and in your sinks and everything, it's now in that water softener over there. And now so you don't see the calcium anymore. You see the sodium, but that sodium is still a salt, and it still is a bad salt. But it's a salt that doesn't leave a deposit. So that's why it feels better, and it looks better, and it helps your piping. But then somebody's going to go over to this water softener with all the calcium, and they're going to dump it somewhere, and usually it's into the sewer. So you end up with, you know, all the calcium that's in your water to begin with, and then you end up with all the sodium that you've hauled in and put in, you know, put in it with the water softener. So the water softeners just literally add more salt. They make the water feel better to you. Maybe I got into more.
No, that's
Yeah.
a clarification for me.
Yeah.
I guess then to just summarize any further comment that I had, I'll go back to this preliminary schedule of projects and the monies that we've already allocated, and get a clarification from you, because I know on the onset when the mayor initiated us progressing forward and taking a look at our wastewater treatment plant, knowing that we were going to have to expand, we allocated some $89,000, I believe it was, to your organization. I'm trying to find out under this, what have we so far already allocated towards? You mentioned it briefly, but I wanted a clarification.
Yeah, the first 4 items, if I'm not mistaken, add up to that amount. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 85, yeah. So those first 4 items are the contracts that you have contracted us for.
Okay.
That's the money you've allocated and are in your budget, and we're happy to send you a bill every month for.
I just have a quick question though, since Councilmember Parker brought it up as far as the cost. Since you spoke about grants and low interest loans that we're going to actually be applying for, just on a clarification on the draft work plan and the cost for upcoming projects. On the figure it shows $530,000, but that total amount actually comes up to $615,000. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't want to see us going out and applying for these grants and then, you know, at the end, you know, we're short $85,000. So is that just an oversight, or is I'm just wondering what?
Tell me where you're reading the numbers again.
On the
It's in the staff report.
right, the first this one here, the draft work plan and cost for upcoming projects. The total amount that is here is $530, but it actually comes up to $615.
Yeah, I remember that figure. I'm trying to think what we didn't put in there.
Would that be subtracting your $85,000 that's already?
That might be it.
Maybe that's what it is, huh?
Yeah.
Close,
Does that sound
anyway.
right?
Close.
I know we prepared that for a discussion with staff, and maybe it doesn't have our, maybe that's just the new work, whereas I've tried to bring the whole thing.
Okay. Well, okay, because it does have the 4 things in here that actually show payment. The 4 things that you mentioned that had been paid already are actually in here already, so I don't know how.
Where it is.
But they're in there being charged again though.
Oh, so this
Well,
one
you're
says, this says 530, but when you add it up, it adds up to 615?
Right.
Okay, I think, I'm guessing that the 530 is just for this last task order, 1, 2.
The last grouping.
Oh, okay.
The last
So
grouping.
if you
So it doesn't
subtracted
show.
that
Okay.
85,000.
Task order number
It
5.
doesn't have the things in there that are already under
Yeah,
contract.
yeah. That's why I redid it, because I knew
Okay.
after we got done talking about that, it was hard to talk to that particular document.
How
Okay.
familiar are you with what the city of Stockton has done? They've pretty much
I know a little bit
debated
about
the
it.
whole situation of dealing, from my understanding, their water service. They pretty much just contracted that out. They don't do it themselves. Are you familiar with what they've done up there in Stockton?
A little bit. They design, build, operate, or operate their treatment plant by contracting it out to private sector, right? Yeah, that was very, very popular. I would say it's cresting. Atlanta is just backed out of it. It was a big contract. I mean, it was $1 billion contract, and they just canceled it. Stockton, there's been some challenges in Stockton. I don't, we're kind of 50-50 whether they'll be able to stay with it or not. It definitely has a lot of enticement in that you get a long-term contract on a competitive basis for someone to operate your plant, or even, like in this case, design it, build it, and operate it. It's been received with, mixed results and mixed optimism. The jury's out whether it will work for Stockton or not.
And I guess then finally, with our southern counterparts of the valley in Fresno, what have been our colleagues, Mayor Alan Autry and his counterpart,
Yeah.
what has been their response to the addition by the Water Quality Board of adding this sheet, if you will, the $2 million additional cost?
It came up at yesterday's meeting. Now, they might have heard it. I heard about it just yesterday.
Okay.
But I'm sure their response is that we were ready to go in there and do do what was planned, and now they're saying they want it lined with a liner. So I think the city's initial response was, we're not doing anything until you tell us what you want. So that means a lot, because that treatment plant really shouldn't go online until that pond is done. So I think they've kind of thrown the burden back on the regional board that says, wait a second, until we come to some negotiated resolution on this on an interim or long-term basis, you may not have a water plant coming. If that's in the paper, I might get in trouble on that one. But that's what I heard.
You might be in trouble. I don't know.
I'm in trouble. It's happened before.
And I have an appreciation for that.
Yeah.
Because it's very pertinent. It's very pertinent
Yes.
to when you're doing cost studies,
That's
when you're
right.
doing urban waste, urban water management plans, sewer master, when you're doing and implementing all these cost factors for these plans that you have, and it's an inch thick, I think was the reference here. And then all of a sudden you're thrown for a loophole. You have all these plans, but we want you to do this.
Yeah.
That's what we're kind of dealing with. I like the reference that you gave, Mayor, when you talked about our new governorship and what's really going on with some of these commissions and quality boards. Because when we were destined to being governed up in Sacramento, we weren't all of a sudden in thrust. And we knew some of these changes were coming, and we also knew as a region in Stanislaus County that what we were doing and how we were treating our water going out to the river, there were pending changes. But like you so well articulated, some of these changes are occurring and being mandates where whether or not we know that we're going to get the funding, and we're left to resolve it as a city to come up with the funding. And I appreciate all you gentlemen's presentation, because it gives us food for thought, most certainly.
Yeah. My crystal ball on Fresno would be that they will go ahead and complete it the way it was planned, and then have a timetable to replace it. And none of that was discussed at the meeting, but I can just, my 30 years experience is that's how they get out of these situations.
Excellent strategy.
Yeah.
We'll get to it later.
Yeah.
Probably doesn't help, David, that the regional office is right there in their city, too. They're keeping an eye on them right there, in their backyard.
And they all live right out there by that water plant and drive by it. They have,
That's not good.
54 inspectors on the way to work every day.
David, I have one quick clarification.
Yeah.
On the water softener ordinance that
Yes.
we would probably come up with,
Yeah.
this would deal with new construction, installation of new construction, would not affect existing water softeners. But what about if you have an existing water softener and you're going to replace it?
Gosh, I don't know. I'd have to read that. I can't imagine.
How would you enforce it?
What did the board say on it? I mean, did they say they want it to the extent of the water softener ordinance?
Yeah.
That would be the real. I got to say something since you brought that up. I've never said this before. Maybe it's why I'm a poor country lawyer, not a rich one.
Feel free.
But I saw this memo about whether we had to do that. That seemed to me the biggest make-work project I ever saw in my life. The water board says we have to have it. That being said, they've got $10,000 budgeted for this ordinance. I looked at the scope of work. Even at $200 an hour, that's 50 hours. I don't see anybody spending more than 4 or 5 hours on this. I don't know anything about the engineering part, but
I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly the way I feel. But there's, what I would want to do, I'd run out, grab a couple of other ordinances from another city and put it together, shoot it, we do it.
Yeah.
But
they're all probably virtually the same, and the other task
Yeah.
I could do in a half hour looking at our
There you
code
go.
book, but
you know, I put the $10,000 in there as a placeholder, you know, and I think it's high. I hope it's high. It's definitely time and material. You will not go find another ordinance, because this will be the first one. That law has just passed. To my knowledge, nobody has written. It's not a difficult ordinance. You know, there's nothing difficult or unusual about it, but it has not been written. So this will be the first one, and many of my other cities are going to deal with this, and I'd like to help you with it, because I'd like to make sure that it's something that could be used. Other cities could take advantage of it too, because as soon as you do one, they'll be coming to you saying, "Can I have a copy of yours?"
We charge a franchise fee for that?
Yeah, something.
but
There's our cost?
copyright that sucker.
There you
but
go.
the scope of work says to review these other ordinances that apparently don't exist.
Yeah.
I think it was review your ordinance, wasn't it? I mean,
No.
I'm sorry.
David, I had a question. We got a hard sell with the people of this community, telling them we're going to spend $23 million on this project. And I know we're doing a financial analysis right now and a rate study.
Mhm.
At what point are we going to be able to show to the public what the breakdown is? Like, for instance, we just had a rate increase. That's certainly not going to pay for that $23 million. But what percentage, is there like a pie chart that's going to show what part that would be paying for, going to that $23 million?
What part, the current rate would?
Yes. In fact, in one statement here, it said the rate increase was not expected to completely fund the city's future $23 million project. So what does that mean?
Tom said that. I guess.
He was referring
yeah.
to the one we've already made.
Yeah.
I know he's referring to
Yeah.
it, but I'm saying is, what part of it is it going to cover? What I'm saying is, there's $23 million out there.
What I said about the rate study is that it isn't going to be brain surgery. You'll know exactly how it works. And so if you need to say, gee, how far did our rate increase go, you know exactly, we'll be able to show that
Okay.
very clearly.
Okay.
That's the way that a rate study is implemented. It's got to be clear to the council and the staff and the public. And so any kind of questions like that you think of, we want to incorporate in the rate study.
Very good. Thank you.
Is there any questions for David? Not, David, thank you for the lovely news you always bring us every time you come. Appreciate it. Nothing personal.
Well, next time I'll try not to bring such a large briefcase of subjects. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 11.2, adopt resolution number 2004, next in number, a resolution supporting a statewide ballot initiative to require voter approval before state government may take local tax funds. How appropriate, huh?
Mr. Mayor, I read over the resolution once again and saw that the one item that I was concerned with has been delineated, so.
Is this the one that has where, I think this is the second one that was on the ballot?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Tim brought up something that he felt should be deleted. That was done, instead of enacting at that time, we put it on the agenda for adoption.
Yeah, we continue.
This is the one that has where they need to set up reserves, but it doesn't say in the ballot actually how much percentage of reserve they need to do. This one, I mean, from what I remember reading on this, it's extremely vague, where they say they need to do certain things, but it doesn't really hold them to anything, like the reserve requirement. It says they'll establish a reserve, but it doesn't say.
Oh, for budget reserve state?
Right, isn't, this is that
So
second?
this is a league one.
This
No,
is the
league one for November.
Oh, this one,
It's
okay.
basically
Okay.
saying that the state cannot take city monies without.
Okay,
voter
I was thinking of
approval.
56.
It's not the one coming up in March. It's-
Okay, yeah, okay. That's fine.
This is one in November, and
Okay,
This is one that I think we have to pass.
Right.
There's no,
okay.
Tim, was that a motion?
Yeah, I move that we adopt resolution number 2004 next to number. A resolution supporting a statewide ballot initiative to require voter approval before state government may take local tax funds.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
And
Item
we will
12.
be around looking for signatures on those petitions too.
Item 12, we will adjourn to meet as Newman Redevelopment Agency. Roll call, please.
Present.
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 Present. Item B, adopt resolution number 2004, next to number, a resolution approving a reimbursement agreement between Yancey Lumber Company and the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Newman. Michael?
Thank you, Chair and board members. Back at our October meeting, I brought forward 2 potential financial packages. Upon further research, one wasn't worthwhile for the applicant as it triggered a prevailing wage requirement, and it was made the project worth more than what he would have to pay. So, excuse me. So what we do come before you with is a reimbursement agreement for the public improvements that the developer is required to place as a condition of his project. Those are outlined within the reimbursement agreement there. There are some requirements that he would have to do and complete prior to the executive officer, executing this document. That would be to, provide the city as bills, copies of invoices, a letter requesting the payment and paying all outstanding fees and debts owed by the developer to the city and or to the agency. So with that, I followed your lead, and we have a resolution here to, once again, authorizing the executive officer to approve this reimbursement agreement. And I can answer any of your questions that you may have. Mr. Honeywell is here representing Yancey Lumber Company if you have any questions for him.
Any
Mr.
questions?
Honeywell did Kern want to make any comments or anything? No? Okay.
Questions for Michael or Kern?
I don't think so. I think we covered this pretty well.
Seeing none, can we have some direction then?
I make a motion that we approve the reimbursement agreement for Yancey Lumber Company.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 13, items from the city manager.
Mr. Mayor, council members of the audience,
Got to adjourn.
just a brief report here.
Excuse me, Jim, adjourn the regular session.
As I've mentioned to you before, and there will be ongoing reports here, recent legislation has occurred effective January 1 that brings the volunteers in the same category regarding OSHA and workers' comp as full-time firefighters. Some onerous things there, one of which, and certainly not the least, but one of the most onerous things is that requirement for the same level of training as full-time firefighters. Well, it certainly is the sort of thing that gets people stirred up. I've taken a position after talking to the chief that we've done and are in really good shape on our equipment. I think that as long as we do the best level of training that we can until this thing sorts itself out, I think we're going to be okay. I think I am in discussions with our workers' comp people when the real effects of this shake out in terms of what are going to be the cost to us, and I'll be able to deal with it better in terms of bringing some real information to you. I know that the firefighters are concerned about this, and I just hope they're not overreacting, but we do have to take it serious, simply because even if we have unlimited funds, and we've always been able to do a really good job of providing equipment and facilities for the firefighters, but if we continue to get in the crunch here of the general fund being reduced in the face of increasing requirements, I can't at this point say how bad it's going to be, because we're in the same situation with law enforcement. We're really getting our backs to the wall, so we need to really pay attention to this. We need to sharpen our budget pencil and get the best information we can, and in the meantime, carry on in the best fashion we can. And I noticed that the chief is here tonight. Now, did you want to make any comments while we got you here?
Not really, but
Jim, just while Chief's going up there, so you think this is obviously one of those new state laws, state mandates, that they're not too sure how they're even going to implement it themselves, in other words?
I think you've hit it on the head, really.
I mean, it's just, this is brand new, wait and see what happens.
Try to cover it.
We're aware of it, but, I mean, they can't enforce everybody everywhere. See what happens. Business as usual, so to speak.
it's just like the sewer and the water, everything's fire department the same way. The state manages everything, they don't want to give you any money.
Exactly.
We're the same problem as sewer and water is right now.
Yep.
So far, we've been carrying our own, but someday we won't be able to do it anymore. But OSHA, Cal OSHA, and the state of California, now they're requiring maybe 230 hours of training per year, which we'll never be able to do it. It's going to be something like 30 hours a month.
Right.
But we're just going to continue the way we are doing. You know, better record keeping, better training, and better
Sure.
equipment.
And I think we've had excellent training
Yeah.
as it is. I mean, I think, you know, for the department size we have, I think we do have an excellent department and we have excellent training.
Chief,
So always we get high marks.
Chief, because you've often mentioned about our level of rating and equating that with some full-time service fire department. Could you just kind of give us just a brief?
Well, the last time we had our rating from we had a 3 rating on the insurance part of it.
Yes.
Some of the cities have got full-time part, they can't even get a 3. I think the only one that's got a 1 probably is Modesto City. But we got a 3 for volunteers. They said we'd never get a 3.
For
But we did get a 3 for volunteers. This would probably be a 4. We got a 3.
And then I know that you recently attended a regional meeting with a number of fire chiefs and department heads from the area, the regional area. Could you just kind of give us, and I didn't see that informational, I think you had done, but could you give us a bit of a briefing on
The
that?
real chiefs? No, I didn't go to that.
No, the recent meeting that you
Oh,
went to.
one in Turlock,
In
yeah.
Turlock.
That's what I'm just talking about. I think I was supposed to get a copy of that deal from Turlock, but I don't think that's done or not. But that's what state's mandated more training. You know, like a lot of departments say, they don't have the money for the training, they don't have the money for the equipment. What are they gonna do? Close their doors?
Right. Plus, not only that, the people, are working full-time jobs. It's not like they
There was
can
one,
take off
there
for
was
all
one deal on
this
TV
time.
here a while back, of some fire department, I forgot what it was at, but they had something like 30 volunteers, but the state mandated all this. A lot of guys are firemen, a lot of guys are this. They said, what we're gonna do, we're gonna close our station down. And their station, that station was, full-time people was 20 miles away. So we do what we do. Any more questions?
Is there any way at the very least, I know this was enacted a few years ago, but held over until they sorted it out and everything. At the very least, can we meet with our legislators to, perhaps look at the possibility of carrying legislation to repeal this? I mean, obviously, it's a different administration that's there. We've got different legislative people now. At the very least, certainly this went into effect 1 January, but, I think the climate's changed a little bit because this was passed a few years ago. It was just carried over for 3 years.
Councilman, I am really surprised that we have not heard anything to that effect, some effort like that being mounted. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. However, there's plenty of other smoke screens going on right now that maybe they're just distracted. So I'd be happy to make an inquiry of the league, Seaside, and see if they've got anything.
I'd like to even take it a step further than that. Being a policy committee member for public safety with the League of California Cities, with the state, I've already made an inquiry just to let the chief know with our league rep, Debbie Olson, because my concern because we can ill afford to not have our volunteer fire department. And once again, state mandates are telling us these things that we can ill afford where they're not backfilling it with money. It'd be different if the state was saying, well, we're going to grant you, the city of Newman, a certain amount of funds so that you can now hire full-time fire department staff, but they're not doing that. And so part of that inquiry was just based on what my colleague has stated, that this was something they passed back in 2001. They deferred it for very good reasons. There's no cost to be able to implement it. And now with the fiscal crisis that we have, now they want to somehow bring it out and say, well, you know what, by the way, we want to start enforcing these mandates that we passed several years ago. I'm going to ask that it be agendized for our next public safety meeting, which is with my colleagues throughout the state, from the bigger major cities down to cities of our population, so that we can discuss this, because major city fire departments are being faced with trying to keep their staffing levels because of fiscal restraints. And with us having a volunteer fire department, we can ill afford to, on a political level, not address this. And so that's kind of answering your question. I kind of started that ball rolling a little bit once I understood the dynamics of this.
Phils?
Who was behind the original, that when it was voted on 2 or 3 years ago? Who pushed it through?
Who pushed this through?
Yeah, who was the supporter?
Firefighters Union, is that what we think, or?
More like the unions trying to get
Firefighters Union, yeah.
more full-time positions
Yeah.
than volunteers.
I think this is one of those mandates like we talked about that the state's trying to put on us. I think right now I'm more scared of the water board than I am of people who are going to implement this plan. I mean, where are they and where are they going to come from, and you know, how they going to go up and down the state and implement this for every department.
Like I think, like we used to do as we do it.
Exactly. Business as usual. You guys do an excellent job.
And I think what we need to do is, Tim was saying, but I think we do need to attack it with a two-prong approach. Certainly what the league is going to be doing and, you know, making it an issue. But I think it's important as well that our members of the legislature are well aware of it, because when it does become an issue and it becomes some type of, you know, I'm not sure to what they're going to do with it, but, you know, when it gets to that point, at least our legislators will be, because, you know, quite frankly, our legislators weren't in there when this was passed. And, you know, they're brand new. Neither one of them, maybe one of them was, but she was brand new at the time. I just think it's important that we look at it from both approaches. Obviously, what the league is going to do is very important, but what our legislators, keep getting them informed to begin with, is going to be important as well.
Where I could work with staff, with our interim city manager, perhaps if there's consensus from our specific town, draft a letter to both our representatives in the state legislation so that they can be aware of this. Is there a consensus?
That's
with
fine.
that?
Consensus.
I'll
And as Jim said,
provide a letter for
we'll
it.
see what, and you said, Tim, we'll see what the league, what they're, I'm sure they've heard about it also, what, you know, what's going to be their position and what are they going to do about it? I mean, are they going to get things going and letters and all that stuff?
Well, the
also?
thing about that, it doesn't leave us out there alone, where
Right.
we're clamoring about it. We can tap into those resources with all the other cities up and down the state that also are being, their communities are being served by volunteer fire personnel.
Jim, do you have anything else?
The only other item I have is to report to you that Officer John Lemus, who's been with the city for 9 years now, successfully competed and has been appointed sergeant of the Newman Police Department effective 16th of this month.
Okay. That's very good. Is that it, Jim?
That's it, that's all.
Okay. Items from city council members. I'll start tonight. Ernie, I had a couple questions for you. One about our industrial area. What's the status on that? I know it's dried up a little bit. Are we able to do anything as far as the weather? Or are we still waiting on PG&E, or what's the status on that?
I've been in touch with PG&E. They are moving ahead with the engineering. They're ready to drop down those their utilities, their conduits that were in conflict with the new roadway that was going to be installed. I haven't gotten a return call back from Sergio Donatelli. That's who I'm working with. Some of the areas down there at the end of L Street is still kind of muddy in some areas, and not knowing what the weather is going to be doing, and since it's not completely dried up, we're just in a holding pattern.
If the PG&E work was ready to go, that'd be a different story. But so then no use bringing them in until that's all finished.
That's correct. And then if the contractor were to come back, and then he'd have to pull out again, and you have additional delays, and they'll probably want extra work.
Okay.
Is that the real delay? I mean, aside from when you first came to us and what sounded really rational is allow them to pull out because of the weather, but yet we're still dealing with PG&E laying down the power source. Is that the crust of the delay?
Yes.
Because you know why I asked that question? You know, I'm not a foreseer of the weather, but the
Right.
weather's been pretty decent. We haven't had the kind of typical storms we've had in past years where they're continuous throughout the
Right.
winter. So with that, I would have almost seen where when we push things through with our streetscaping through the inclement weather that was far worse than we've had this year. But I want to know if the crux is really still some of the delays that have been typical from PG&E, and you could be frank about that if that's the case.
A lot of it has to do with how long that water sat out there. There was a pond out there, and it really penetrated
dry up.
deep into the soil, so it's still wet underneath there.
But even still, there are some things that if they were there, they wouldn't be able to do because of PG&E.
That is correct, but again, in talking with PG&E, they're also ready to move on the lowering of those utility lines, but they don't want to get into that soft soil yet. So
Did we ever address
also
that? Did we ever address that with corporate via letter? We talked about it.
We tried.
And I got concurrence here.
We
I mean,
tried.
when you say we tried, did we actually write a letter of displeasure?
I
Or
think
no?
that the mayor made contact, if I recall correctly, directly
With PG&E?
with PG&E.
Yeah, everybody I called either got moved or retired, so.
I think it would be, and if I have to do it myself with concurrence of my colleague, I'll draft a letter so that it's in writing, because this has been something that I don't think is acceptable for our town. In other words, I really commend your efforts, Mayor, but if it's something in writing, then it makes it a living, breathing document that shows, it says, well, you know, we've had some displeasure in these areas that have cost our city in time, because it pushes back our efforts.
I think we should, that's a good idea, Tim. I think we should find out the status on the engineering before we draft the letter. You know, to see if it's close, maybe we'll send it afterwards the work's done. You know what I mean? So we don't, you know, upset anybody.
Yeah. But the reason why I say that is, you know, we can just keep getting pushed with delays and saying, you know, being put off. I said, oh, that person's no longer working here, or they've retired. You know, you get your services when you get it, and it's just really not acceptable.
I think with the status of PG&E and their bankruptcy and all that stuff, we're not the only city that's having these problems. I think every city up and down the valley, from what I understand, is having the same problems.
opportunity.
They're so far behind.
TID.
Yeah.
TID. We missed that.
I know that was the answer.
Ernie, also,
Yes.
what's the status on our bench and our pot that we have ordered right across from the theater? Remember they got run into?
Well,
Yes.
add the bullet to it. It's been dark over here.
I know we're waiting for that stuff too. Do we know what's the status on those orders?
Doug has been in touch with them. I forgot to ask him today. I met with him at the parking lot this afternoon to discuss the elimination of that parking lot. So
That one spot?
That one spot, so that we could stripe it, so they could quit backing up and running into the bench and the pots. He did mention that there is one that I believe David and Ferris want to move across the street, that little tree, because
Yeah, there's one tree that she wants to put in the pot whenever. we-
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're working with them.
It's not something that's ordered, we're just waiting for it
Yes.
to come in. Okay. Thank you, Ernie.
Welcome.
Thank you, Ernie.
The only other thing I had, I'd like to invite everybody to the First Chamber of Commerce Mixer this Thursday night at Rico Fitzer Pierce and Associates, 6 o'clock. It's the first one of the year, and the Chamber President is supposed to give a State of the City address, so that's something we don't want to miss. So invite everybody for that.
I thought you did that.
Well, Chamber President's State of the City address, I don't know what he's got up his sleeve, but
Their
we can't miss that.
their thoughts are a little different there.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I had. David?
I just, I know we've been recruiting for a new city manager for quite a while, and the recruitment closes the 23rd of this month. And I just kind of made a little schedule here that I'd like to see if we could implement. So that closes 23rd, if we could review the resumes that evening at our council meeting, And then interview the candidates on March 6th at a special meeting on a Saturday, and have a new city manager on board by April 1st. Does anyone see any problems with that?
Yeah, I can't make it a Saturday on the 6th. I know that for a fact right now.
Repeat that, would you, David?
Yeah, city manager recruitment closes 23rd. Review resumes on the 23rd in closed session. Interview candidates on March 6th. Special meeting, new manager on board April 1st.
24th, review the,
20, is it 24th our meeting, or 23rd?
24th.
24th, okay then, I'm sorry, but 24th. Gives them an extra day to get it together. I think
Well,
it's
that first
imperative
part-
that we did this as fast as possible.
That first part would not be a problem.
Yeah, I agree with
Right.
that.
But the last part, having him on board, well, that depends on who you got and their availability. But it
Well, I
doesn't hurt to
realize
shoot
that,
for it.
but that
Right.
gives them roughly 3 weeks.
Yeah, but it doesn't hurt to shoot for it.
Did we say 1 April? Oh,
Yeah, 1 April.
Oh, I won't be here, I like the implementation. I think this is something we need to move forward on. I know that we've had the applications out since, Mr. Buell's been here. I know we reiterated that with you, basically putting the ad out additionally with the, MQs. I like the schedule with the acceptance that we all need to be here. So I think by the February 24th date when we're reviewing the applicants, that we could come up with a formalization of when we'd like to make
Yeah,
those
we have to
decisions.
give them like a week's notice anyway to get here in case they're out of town people or something, you know.
Yes, so I think,
There's always the second and fourth meeting in March.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking, you know, we might have to hold off until we get to the March meetings to make those decisions. And then set a date forward for start date. So that,
The first meeting in March, is that what we're talking about? The
First
ninth?
meeting in March to interview?
The 9th?
That's, okay. That's March the what is that?
March.
Yeah, March the 9th. So it's just a subsequent meeting right after we review the applications.
So that'll at least
and
give us
resumes.
2 weeks to bring the person in.
Mhm.
I was just thinking that a Saturday would probably give us more time and everyone could be there. Doesn't necessarily have to be the 6th.
Well, we do that still in closed session. And I'm willing to just
How many
avail my
applicants do we
time.
have?
We don't know yet, the date's still open.
Oh, well, till now though.
I'm willing to just avail my time during the course of a meeting.
Yeah.
Because it'll be kind of a difficult conflict with our schedules, it sounds like, and all of us need to be here.
Mhm.
But it still progresses it through at pretty much the time frame that you've outlined.
Will that work, David? You happy with that? I mean, that's,
Yeah, I think so.
I think, you wanted to have a meeting on the 6th, well, a couple of days later is a meeting on the 9th, so
That's our
we're
regular
only
scheduled
gaining,
meeting.
we'd only be gaining a couple of days, so.
Yeah, I was just thinking a weekend might be better, but if you'd rather do that during the week, that's fine. I'm available.
So I will have everything in for you on the 24th,
Yeah.
Right.
and you'll do your work and see what you got.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll probably be able to tell a little better by then, and
How many
try
applicants
to
we actually have.
gel your schedule.
And if it's necessary, maybe we can call for an early session again, just as we've done today, maybe even earlier, for, depending
Yeah,
on,
that's
you know,
fine.
travel
That's fine.
time.
Yeah,
for
I
a
think
session.
probably if we review them on the 24th, we can narrow it down
Narrow
a
it
certain
down to
amount.
certain time.
Mhm.
We have some,
Sounds like a plan.
Sounds
some
like a
candidates
plan.
we can interview on that first meeting in March.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And it may necessitate that it depends on how many applicants we have, we schedule it, you know, intermittently, where we may not have them all on one night, where we have to do it on a subsequent meeting, just depends.
Depends on who we have.
Yeah, how
I
many,
think we'll get a
23rd?
better sense on the 24th.
look at the numbers.
That's it. Go from there.
David, do you have anything else?
That's all, thank you.
Bob?
No, other than, we need to get out and take a look at our downtown area. It's not looking that good. I think it's the plants and everything. And I guess we're gonna have to get a committee together and go back out and do some replanning
Let me
because,
talk to Susan.
yeah, because
tomorrow.
it's looking pretty shabby.
Well, we want to make sure the frost is done before we go plant new flowers, so it's kind of,
Well, that's true.
it's cold this morning.
The streetscape committee is still in effect, right?
Yeah, but I think that, like David said, he's gonna talk to,
I think it was like 28
He's the
degrees
one
this
that
morning.
Chairman.
organizes that
Yeah.
stuff.
No, good point.
but I think we just have to keep on top of that because we have a beautiful downtown area and we wanna keep it that way.
There's a couple groups that have approached me, they're willing to help, some youth groups, so we just need to,
That's a good
when the
idea,
frost is
too.
over and
Is
we're
it-
done.
The ones where you gotta get down
Plants
on your
suffering,
knees and do it.
or is it just winter?
I
Yeah,
think-
winter
I think the
stuff.
winter is taking its toll, and I think it just needs some tender loving care.
What's
And-
kind of amazing is the different plants in different pots seem to
Yeah,
do better
you notice
in
that?
different places. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have this, we've always had problems with the centerpiece growing, and the one down by the dry cleaners is huge,
yeah.
like a tree.
Or
In
gets
the
more
same way, some of
sunlight
them
or
have no ivy, and some are just covered with ivy, so it's
That's the sidebar over there, right?
Bob? Is that it?
That's it.
Charles?
I don't have anything.
Tim?
Did we ever settle our bill with the county on the special election? So we haven't got anything back yet, right? Because I know we were in disagreement over the cost factor.
He was going to reduce it by $3,000 $59, but I have not received the revised invoice.
Okay.
But that will be your new charges. Implementing the computerized election machine will be much costlier than what we have.
Wow.
It should have cost $9,000 instead of $21.
I'm getting paid for everybody else.
What was
Yeah.
that about the machines, Margaret? I'm sorry.
Margaret, can you come
Margaret?
back here, please?
The new machines are gonna cost more, naturally they have to pay for them, so they're gonna charge each city in the county more
Oh,
too,
you mean
when it
in
comes
the
down to
future,
it.
not for that,
Future elections.
because that was an experimental thing with them, so
And they should pay us.
they should pay us,
Yeah.
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 That's what I thought.
They are not paying us. They are giving us, just to keep us quiet, a $3,000 credit on that $21,000
Well,
bill.
that may not keep us quiet, so that bill,
I
that
don't-
And in the
bill may be
future-
held for a little while longer.
You can expect that charge in the future if when we ever have a special election, that was not a miscalculation on their part. That is what they want to charge us. So
Like
in the
Margaret-
future, you can expect that type
Like-
of fee.
Like Margaret said, we haven't paid it yet, we're still negotiating.
I'm-
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember
Thank you, Margaret.
authorizing the warrant.
No,
That's right.
hasn't come by yet.
Tim,
I have
anything
nothing
else?
further. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. We will adjourn the closed session.
What about our applicants?
The what?
We need some good coffee.